what the rainbow really is and how you get all of the symbolism and even all the text that's necessary as far as occult text about what the rainbow is. Because it's first stated by the God of the Bible, who clearly is part of this nefarious agenda, that let the rainbow be a sign of my covenant. Okay? So when we move that out of the mouth of the one who wants to try to steal all the power all the time, what we get said is that the rainbow is a sign of the agreement. Okay? So what agreement are we talking about? And sure enough, if we keep digging or even meditating, we'll find that every single aspect of the body, mainly the primary organs and the primary fluids, the primary glands, they all move in a certain number sequence, but they are drastically different from one another. But what they've done is they've somehow come into a synergy, which by definition means it's no longer what it was before, but it has become a collaboration of everything that was involved in order to create something better. So there's a synergy that takes place in order to create something that's greater. So what the rainbow is the rainbow is a sign of those colors, which cover the entire spectrum, coming together to become something greater. So this is the first thing. And watch, we'll show with with the symbol of the rainbow, we find the truth. Now, also, when there's a transition between one color and another color, it doesn't just start. There's a fusion of those two colors that go on like a monitor. It's got millions of these fusions of colors and different shades of purple until it finally transcends into the next color. Those are the marriages. Those are the blending that goes on in order to create a bridge between one absolute, I'm red, and another absolute, I'm orange. And then we get this fusion of colors. So when we play that out in the physical realm, because as above, so below, what we find is, well, what is the whole purpose of this agreement? And this is what one just says when they're in the meditation about this whole thing. Well, what is the purpose of this agreement? It's to build a bridge. And sure enough, we find that the same design of the rainbow is actually the same design that most bridges are built in. Yeah. And it's for a reason. And they even call it Rainbow Bridge. But what are we talking about? A bridge to what? Well, it's a bridge from the world of the living to the world of the hereafter, which we need to stop calling the realm of the dead. And when that rainbow bridge is broken, now there's no connection between those two worlds. And that's also in the Norse mythology about them breaking the bridge, right? Mm-hmm. So then when you go on, what you find out is that we were responsible for keeping the connection between us and our ancestors. Now, I used to get confused about this, especially when I started. I was throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But to understand and connect with one's ancestors is no different than you connecting with your great grandma. And if you're not into doing that, it's because you've been brainwashed. If you won't take care of your parents when they're dead, if you won't go and visit your grandma when she's old, it's because you're out of balance. You're not even like what all of us used to be, because we knew what are we doing? We're making this connection between the realm of the living and the realm of the hereafter, so that way we can have immortality. True immortality, which is actually being conscious of your living. See, immortality is guaranteed for every being, but the definition of immortality actually means that you're conscious through the entire process. So that got a little confusing for me in the meditation. So I asked for a deeper explanation. And it says, okay, well, let's erase it all right now. And then let's just talk about your memories. Now, your memory. If you don't have memory, what do you have? Well, first of all, if I didn't have a memory, I would have never remembered to get on the phone today. I actually would have never remembered to get on the computer. Actually, what is a computer? Actually, who am I? Mm-hmm. You see, it all is nothing without memory. Memories are the only power.
Yeah.
You see, this is where we start drilling into it. Like, this is what I have to say to everyone today, like, I don't care how long I'm going to be here. As long as I can get this across, then everything is already in the works for the benefit of humanity. Understand that your memory is your power. Because here's one advantage of having memory of your ancestors. You'll know not what to do again.
Yeah.
See, the ancestors beat their heads against the process of going through physical realities and what to do and what not to do in order to maintain the balance, which is that rainbow. And they learned that we all need to work together. And there could even be marriages between what we would think is two opposing forces, yellow and or red and blue. And then comes this synergy of even greater beauty. So we're having a great time. But if we break those connections, if we allow our differences, see, the differences is why I'm yellow and you're orange. But when someone says, well, everything should be yellow, it's like the movie The Giver. You start to see that that kind of consciousness is actually more malevolent than any kind of consciousness. Because what it produces is it produces one who can make actions and not even feel like there's anything wrong with what they're doing. Case in point, when the Muslims wanted to exterminate the Hindus, they did it in the worst ways, cutting people open, bellies, mothers, raping, the whole nine. But somehow that felt okay because, after all, these people were different and they weren't like them. So that gave them the feeling inside that they could do that. That's what happens when we start to disrespect the differences. Now, remember, I'm not talking about evil, because I found my message constantly being disturbed by evil attempting to assert that, yes, that also means evil too. We must come into balance with evil. No. Evil, you're in your own distorted world. You're not darkness. You're not the deep, dark purple. You're not blue, black. You see what I mean? You're something else. You're the distortion and the confusion that comes across when the bridge is broke. And that's why they explain to you, again, now when we go back to the occult lore, that Yaldabaoth, which is definitely it's called a tetragrammatis, a chimera. What it means is that in the attempt to formulate this male womb that I was telling you about, that there came forth a creation from this male womb, male aspect first, and that is the God of the Bible. That is the one that is in the whole, I mean, it's obviously anti-feminine in the Bible if you didn't check it. And in fact, when you really get the real books, it talks about circumcision is actually not just to cut the foreskin. Circumcision is to cut the entire penis. And then the man is to be made an eunuch, meaning that he's no longer to engage with women. Same thing with the Knights Templar. In their oaths of monkhood, and in most oaths of monkhood, by the way, you are never to engage with a woman again. The Knights Templar even went one more step. You couldn't kiss your mother or your sister. So what we're seeing is clearly what I'm explaining, that something is back there attempting to sever the two forces. Woman is then seen as negative and corruptible. Man is then seen as some type of even space being from the light and the sun god. You see what I mean? And then they got us over here believing in all this stuff and destroying ourselves through our beliefs. If there was anything truly right about it, I wouldn't even be on the phone today. I would be having a great time in our balanced world with our bridge. And then I would be connecting to my ancestors for thousands of years ago and not acting like I'm totally disassociated with them. I would know my history and I would know what all these herbs do, and I would have a communication with them rather than looking at them on the shelf all dehydrated. You see, so I know where the greater world is. I know what the better world is. No one has to convince me of that. I can't be convinced edgewise either. So what I'm saying is, when we get true knowledge and true adepthood, it starts to reveal this to us through us. It starts to show us the same way we act now and the same things that we believe. This is the root to it. The root is because for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, there's been an agenda to enslave our every being through us being divided. Because in that, we can't have power. You're talking about a phenomenal cosmic power being split into so many different parts that none of those parts have an effect. It's almost like a person who's very powerful but trying to do too much. Hello, I'm one of them. I have so many responsibilities. My power is in speech. My power is in writing. I find myself trying to figure out who slipped a worm into the site and now is crashing. I find myself trying to figure out, what kind of camera that's needed that's going to stay on for more than 30 minutes. I find myself trying to figure out how we're going to generate more capital just to keep alive what we spent 6 years building. You see? So this is why one can then realize, because there's no power in division. And until people start coming together, then you don't have blue where red should be and yellow where pink should be. Everyone is at their stations and what they enjoy. And in the event, and this is what true, let's say we'll use the word magic today is, in the event that you're ready to make a transfer, then you already know what the diametric opposition of what you need to blend with in order to cause that transfer. Meaning, if you decide, well, now I want to go experience X, it's in the herb. There's an herb for it. There's a color for it. There's a crystal for it. There's a time of day for it. There's so many correspondences to whatever you're attempting to achieve. Then it means that you're truly limitless. That's what this was. So don't let also these people convince you that Earth has always been a prison system. It wasn't built and designed that way.
Yeah.
What happened was the greed and the jealousy and the envy of the differences. See, because in the ancient culture, what they attempt to teach you first is how you're unique and how everything is created unique, to have a unique divine purpose, but all comes from the same source. That's rites of passage 101. You have to know what your uniqueness is, because when you find your uniqueness, that method in which you use to find it allows you to also teach others how to find their uniqueness. Now, notice you're not trying to teach them how to be like you. You just you flunked the course. After all, everything is unique. You're attempting to show them the core path, which works for everyone, of how to understand your uniqueness. And then also you are instilling within them but we all come from the same source. We have this unique divine purpose. Now, it of course reminds you then of even how the Mayan societies were run with them knowing what your purpose was, like what you were good at. And they put you into that faculty and that capacity. Blue snake lightning, he's good at climbing trees and bringing in these fruits, and then also generating energy of this special kind of force. You see, so each person has their unique ID. And this is each person then, because now we have to get real with this. Each person then being in themselves a part of the chain that is expanding across the abyss, that is allowing us not to fall in it. See, right now we're falling in the abyss. Our bridge is broken. So the uniqueness that made us all great is now actually becoming our Achilles heel, the more that we're taught that we should all be the same way. You see? So this is really important pointers today, because it gives some demarcations between, like I said, what is true uniqueness, what is evil versus darkness, what are these different components? Because if we don't know these and we take it for granted, then we're led astray. And there is enough of these entities, because remember what you're dealing with, and I'll rewind for one moment here. What you're dealing with in the Egyptian Book of the Dead is actually the instructions on how to maintain immortal on the physical plane. That's what the book was written for. And these people are not playing. We play, they don't play. This wasn't just fanciful for them. They figured out something. So why do you think it was so important, the Rosetta Stone, for the controllers that we're dealing with today? Because they didn't know what those prayers said. So they didn't know the method or the formula or the ingredient or the recipe to immortality. Now that they know it, they emulate that all the time. They take the pyramids, they got the stuff down at the Louvre, all in their secret society. They got all Anubis there. They got the entire Egyptian Book of the Dead consistently on display that no one understands except for those who crack the script to know what the script means.
Mm-hmm.
And so thus they're deifying themselves. That's what they were counting down to. Well, we're going to, because this God that they're worshiping, which if you ever really understand this stuff, or if you ever even have the opportunity to speak with someone who is a sorcerer, they're very clear about this. Their God lives in the realm of Nod. Their God lives in the realm of the dead. Because if you look in the text, because Cain becomes the embodiment for the androgynon. That's why you always, the male androgynon that wanted a male womb that I was explaining earlier, that's code name Cain. Cain goes to the land of Nod. That's known as the astral plane, or the realm of the dead, or the realm of those that sleep. And the reason why it's called as such is because few, only the greatest adepts, can stay in the astral plane indefinitely. And even then, it breeds a certain level of madness. Why? Because it's not stable. See, the whole reason for us to be on Earth, and why Earth is often associated with a tree and with roots, and you need roots, you need ground, is because you cannot just float off into the abyss indefinitely and expect to maintain any kind of memories. You can't anchor yourself. So they say that their God went into that realm and is maddened by that realm. So anytime that God is brought into this realm or evoked into this realm on those specific holidays, it comes ravaging, pillaging, and all distorted and just maniacal. There's even words. The words that mean the most craziest things are actually the words that come from the name of that entity. So we have to realize then that what we're dealing with is see, this word soter, S-O-T-E-R. This is the word that was originally used for when we said savior, because we have to stop trying to sync English words back 2,000 years ago. You can keep it in the Greek perspective, but you can't cross it over into things like koinoform and into metuneter. And it's because that's where they cut everyone off from the knowledge. They remove the hieratic and demotic scripts, which are the scripts. Okay, I got to go back a little bit. So what happens is that the rise of this masculine distorted empire starts with Samaria. And it's because that's why the Sumerians are like the epitome of the matriarchal civilization empire, right? They even tell you that in history books. Oh, they started the first civilization. Now, everyone knows if you're wild, the last thing you want to do is be civil. And then you see in the Sumerian paintings them messing with the tree. That's the tree of life. That's the genetics. And you also see them with taming these beasts. Those are the aspects of the zodiacs, also known as the archons, that are the root to the organ systems and things of the physical bodies of all beings of flesh. So what you're witnessing, though, is because Tons Bruns, he proves this without a doubt. And that's why his books are like $150, right? He's got 2 books, and it's called Geometrica Egyptica, I believe, the geometry of Egypt. And what he goes on to explain is basically the Sumerians hated the Kemetans. And what they did was they hated them so much that they didn't want to use their language. So they created this language called koinoform. And this koinoform language, which is set up on a grid of 8x8. Now, we've heard of that grid before. That's I Ching, and that's the chessboard. That this grid was actually what they began to construct this language, this new language that they began to develop, which was wedges. These wedges also are synonymous with how to bore into your spirit. That's why they're holding that pine cone up against a tree, because they're using wedges in that specific design, which is a concave triangle with a point, to burrow into realities or into consciousness. But that may be too deep. So just to keep it on the surface, all the language is doing is recording how many slaves they have, how many kings, the king's power. It records most of what we find in the matriarchal tradition of the Bible, the flood story, Gilgamesh. We find every single person, Upnefishtin, Noah. So it shows you that the patriarchal cult actually starts in Samaria, because the Sumerians were envious of the Kemetans and the knowledge of Ma'at and the great mother earth, blah, 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 blah. So they create the tradition. They kill Tiamat. Marduk kills Tiamat. So you're seeing the embodiment of the entire story that I'm explaining to you right now between two people, Sumerians and Kemetans. And those two groups today make up the opposite ends of that rainbow. And it seems like to me, though, because I'm not trying to demonize the Sumerians, because to say they were all evil is like saying that all the Kemetans were good. What has to happen is same thing that Dynamo Jack had said. You got to learn how to bring these forces together. And it seems like to me that these two forces, just from a aspect of studying history, are the embodiment of the logical and the spiritual. Because without those two components, one can go headlong into error. Meaning that even if you don't have that check and balance system and you're going with the flow, you're probably going to end up in a short period of time in the hands of some evil person. Meaning that you're like, okay, oh yeah, brother, whatever you want to do. Oh yeah, let's say that. Let's sing that. Oh, okay, yeah, let's go there. Okay, let's pray to this. Oh, that's what you want me to do? So if you're just with the flow, which is also a symbol of the divine feminine, if you're just with the flow and you don't have that, wait a minute, but why are we doing this? Which is the symbol of the logical masculine, like I need some instructions and I need to know where that came from. Then you can come off balance. You can put yourself into a situation that you're not prepared for. So now fast forwarding, see how I had to explain just the history of what was going on with these two back and forth superpowers. Is the word Soter, which is where I left off, meant savior. Okay. So any character like what we call Jesus was known as a Soter. But the interesting thing is when you really study this word, because it also means to deliver, the deliverance, safety, preservation, this is a Soter. But the identity of a Soter was always a demon, the spirit daemon of a cult. Like basically what it's saying is any tradition that came forth always had a focal point, something that they were trying to point everyone to. In Christianity, it's Jesus. In Islam, it's Muhammad. In Buddhism, it's Buddha. In every tradition, there is something that they try to point you to concentrate all of your power.
Yeah.
And that becomes known as a daemon. And that word does not necessarily mean something positive or something negative, just something you should observe. And because it gets life, because we give it life, that's why even in certain texts and scriptures it says, you gave me life. It says even that God breathed breath into other forms. Who's God if it isn't man and woman? We can breathe life into other things. It's even deeper than eidolons, which are like when we think about things really heavy and then an energetic form is created. This is different. This is devotion. This is worship. This is praise. This is honor. This is what they call the sevenfold spirit. The sevenfold spirit is all the things of the greatest character that you can emit from yourself to another. And that's why they call it a devotee. Because when you give all of those essences, which seem to also correspond with your seven organs, correspond with the seven fluids, the melatonin, serotonin, etc. When you give all of that into something else, it becomes animate because you've given it life, God. So this is what's happening. So the big play is that we push our power into something else. It becomes more powerful while we become weaker. And then the more power we push into that, the less power and connection we have with ourselves, which is our ancestral lineage. And then the less power we have to give to our ancestors. This is like some people always spend more time in these church and these temples than they ever spend at grandma's house, than they ever spend with granddad, ever.
Yeah.
Even with their own children, they spend more time in the church and praying and on their knees than they spend with their children. And it's because their power is being drained and diverted. But notice how, because I know you two are on to this, but notice how all of this is done without the slightest bit of realization that this is what's going on. Likewise, here's another deeper thing that we mentioned during the last conversation, but we can't neglect to mention it during this one. And it's that, so remember, this cult that we're talking about, which makes up these Soters or daemons, It's a wand or torch that keeps being passed from one person to another. And this could be Constantine the Great. This could be the immortal Charlemagne. This could be Alexander the Great. Generally, whoever it is has the great behind their name, and they generally want to be served. This could be Jesus, the King of Kings. It could be any king or any lord. Generally, anyone who wants to take upon that title. Because in the ancient setting, if you were to become the leader of the tribe, first of all, generally there wasn't a leader. What there was elders. And you can't actually put elders in the same category as leaders, because we see leaders as like the guy who's triumphing with the sword and, the king, and just all the ideology that they give us today, versus the role of what we would call leader back in the times, the elders, was to give you knowledge and wisdom, was to nourish you in times of trouble. You don't see that in these kings today. Never do you see, when you're stranded or in bad luck, any of these folks showing up to talk to you about anything.
Yeah.
No. So they can't be defined as actual elders. They're surrogates. They're sorcerers. They've usurped the power of most cultures and put themselves into that position, right? So we find that there's quite a few of them, but they all adhere to this one archetypical structure. It's a top-down structure like a pyramid. And when we start to identify them more, and I have to take a break here for just a quick moment. I wanted to take a break at the top hour. But then we start to really unmask what's kind of like behind all of these religions. And I'll bring up this topic before we take a quick break. And this topic really is that we now need to look into just one specific scenario about selling a spirit, okay? Because you can never sell the soul. You don't have a name. If it doesn't have a name, then it hasn't been created. So from that level alone, what exists within all of us can never be pinned down or sold, or someone can take it or whatever. Now, somebody can fool you and make you believe that such things could happen, which is a whole different matter. But in truth, the soul cannot be even put into a bottle, can't be identified, okay? But you can sell your spirit, it turns out. And people need to be aware of this, because many people are selling their spirits, and they just need to cancel those contracts and get their spirit back. Because this happens when they go out and they delve into these different kind of belief systems and these occult structures, and they do things that bind themselves into it more, like the rituals and the beliefs and the baptism. All this stuff is designed to tie them in more, just to create memories and reference points to where the person feels like they can't get out of that structure. So, and generally, the more people are involved in it, then you have the 100th monkey syndrome working against us. Okay, because we always talk about this 100th monkey syndrome in consciousness, that one day that all of a sudden consciousness is going to start sweeping the land, and then we're going to have this 100th monkey syndrome, right? But what if ignorance is sweeping the land and we get 100th monkey syndrome in ignorance? Isn't that just is viable to happen? Yes, it's 100 monkey syndrome is not just exclusive to good things happening, but for a mind that only thinks good, it is. And that's why we have to keep our minds in balance so we can get the other side of the story. Because what the other side of the story shows us is that, okay, let me give you a brief synopsis. So Baphomet actually ended up becoming the symbol that they're using today to explain to you this off-balance, matriarchal, hermaphroditic freak. And the reason is that you understand it is because John the Baptist is actually also the embodiment of Baphomet. Okay, and this John the Baptist was also Oannes. Oannes was known to be the fish god male who came from the sea and was associated with the Sumerian pantheism. Remember, I told you a while ago, because he gets another name in the Sumerian, but I said a while ago that, remember in Sumerian drawings, you see the guy, he's standing up there with the king, as a king, and he's got the fish on his back? That's Oannes. Wasn't that the guy that they said that came and taught them all their knowledge? But what kind of knowledge was he teaching? That was the cult right there. That's the cult of the Baptists, or the cult of the Baphomet, or the one who comes from that says he comes from the sea, right? He comes from this ocean. He's coming to baptize. So what you start seeing in the metamorphosis of this whole process is that the Knights Templar, one of the main portions of this cult is the relics. See, there's even an ancient saying that says that when we have the relics, we become more powerful. Our cities, meaning our powers, become greater. That's why they put these relics in New York. They put these relics in the Vatican because through these relics are holding energy of people praying and worshiping them for thousands of years, and also the true embodiment of what they really mean, but then it becomes distorted and hacked. So one of the relics was the head of John the Baptist. What you see in the Bible was said to be cut off. See, this was the king that lost his head to the cherubim. And they said that that head, which kind of gives us the mythology of the crystal skulls, had the ability to prophesy. And the reason is that any being that begins to take in a large amount of light, this is gnosis, their pineal gland and their hippocampus and hypothalamus begin to crystallize. It's like what we see in crystals today. So when you're gone, your head becomes like a crystal ball. And people can consult with your head. So sure enough, you find in ancient cultures, even all the way up until today, skulls being consulted for knowledge and information. But this one in specific that I'm talking about is the head of Oannes. Now, some say it's crypto. It's actually not a physical head. It's more of the phallus symbol. That's why supposedly Osiris, which is the entry of the dominant male culture into the Egyptian pantheon, doesn't have his genital principle. It's removed. It was cut off. So this is supposedly what they have, and that's why they show all this phallic symbolism around what they do. And in this, they consort with the entity behind the phallus. Okay, so again, it gets into a lot of the male distortion kind of things, which we'll just leave at that. So that was a part of the rites of joining into Knights Templar. So when we look at the Knights Templar, which are the embodiment of all secret societies today, think about it. If you study secret societies, anyone who studies them knows that they have their root in the Knights Templar. And who those Knights Templar were the same people that you see that were dominating territories and attempting to become rulers of everything. And they had stooped to sorcery, necromancy, dysurgy, and syzygy. You have to look up those words to understand what they mean. I don't have the time and space to actually explain them. But when they resorted to that, it's like, again, someone who would do anything for power, they had become under the persuasion of something that had already been cut off long time ago, meaning that this thing is just making a comeback. That's why we're experiencing so much turmoil in the world, because back in the day, me and you had already gotten rid of this thing, meaning we had already restored balance and killed the whole idea that there was going to be one that was greater than the other. And what we promised is that that would never happen again, because it breaks the bridge as it's doing now. All this is like layman's terms for us right now. If we just get out of the hole that this is mystical and that, this it has to be, on the spiritual plane, bring it right here, right now. We are under duress. And we cannot live in this kind of frequency and reality. And no longer do we want to live with losing our memories, which is our power, because then we will be coming in here on training wheels every single time. And this thing, which is preserving itself lifetime after lifetime because it stole the knowledge from the book of the dead, will be so many far lengths ahead of us. It will keep whipping us around with stories that we can get into and just dissect and still never get us any further than where we started, like what's happening today in the conscious community with their most prevalent topics that still have nothing to do with spirituality, but have to do with things that people are doing and creating right now in the world, like the politics and the government. So to continue, who the Knights Templar were they were these group of sorcerers. And what they call hermetics. As way they say, it's the hermetic system of the Golden Dawn. It's not the alchemical system of the Golden Dawn, because those who were hermetics, and this is not saying anything bad to one who studies hermetics under the guise that it's alchemy, because I was one of those people. I thought that hermeticism was the being a hermit and being by yourself, basically, and studying knowledge and not letting the world get to you. It turns out that it's not. It's actually consecrated to Herne, the hunter, or Holy Hermes. And when you check the ID of this character, it's Baphomet. That's why in Baphomet's picture, he's holding the rod of Hermes in his lap. Go look at it. Because it's telling you that we have this knowledge of everything about you, your positive side, your negative side, your central side, and that egg on top that we want to eat. It's showing you in their symbolism that they want to dominate us, that they want to take our power and our freedom away. But how can they do such things? Well, we're not talking about a dummy. See, that's the other problem, is people think that these beings are ignorant, but we're not. We're functioning on 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of memory. They have all the ancient records. So who's going to be the dummy until we rebuild the bridge? So what happens is that what they did was they devised a system that no one would ever know was actually a system that removes their spirit. And we're going to talk about that system right now. Actually, let's talk about it when we come back. That's a good segue, and it allows us to take a brief moment. Let me just, clear my mind, go use the restroom really briefly. And then when I come forward, I'm going to finish off in this conversation today. We're going to answer the questions that need to be answered, but with really the greatest revelation, if you may, of the moment of understanding these Knights Templar and their religion, and also what exactly they were doing that has got us so binded at this point.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And also how to get out, because knowing is half the battle. Remember, I don't talk about any of this stuff if there's not something in this that's going to allow us to break free. Because other than that, it just goes into the category of, hey, that's just poison. It seems to not have a cure bundled with it. What I'm going to reveal is to let people understand exactly what's going on so they can't be fooled. And then it's a simple mind change. Like what you'll notice is that I'm going to mention some things that have been done that have a cause and effect to them. And it makes us feel low, and it makes us feel in debt, and it makes us feel like we owe somebody something. But that's a system that has been put in place that the moment that we reveal the fallacy behind that and the falsehood in it, then it dissolves there. There's nothing to go and fill out. There's nothing to change about your name and none of that crazy stuff that people have going on right now, because the transitions are made first on the spiritual plane, not in the physical. So the moment that you sin from your mind, which is the closest to the spirit, when you sin from your mind, the confirmation of what you're about and what you know, then those changes begin to be made. So let's take about 5 minutes here, 10 minutes. And then when we come forward, I really want to drill into this. And I also want to say thanks for those that are listening. And then I, of course, want to say thanks to Christina and Stefan, for bringing this back around so that we can, reveal this to people, because, this stuff is like going through a minefield with 100 people behind you, because you're walking over history. And then also you're also walking over some very uncomfortable parts of history. And that's, of course, and to keep another conversation going on, so another thing people need to know is that the thalamus is what's really responsible for what we actually see. It can tune out what we call the spiritual world, because we don't like to see those figures that are in the spiritual world. Like when you see someone down and out and on downtown drinking and drugging, and you're just looking at them, what else do you think is going on around them on the spiritual plane? You can only imagine, right? But back in the day, we could see it. And the whole goal of us being able to see it was to get rid of it, because we weren't sorcerers. You see, we didn't need something from him. See, people leave the people there because they're like, oh, shit, surely he can't give me anything, so I'm out of here. We don't care that he's being tormented by something that's out of our visual spectrum. But when you have the compassion, that's like, oh, the passion of Christ. They like to try to mix it in, but it's really when you have that compassion, your kundalini is open. And when your kundalini is open, you can see those entities. And when you see those entities, then you put those entities in place, and then that man is truly free. But until then, he remains binded by his own vices and his own minions, decisions and choices that he made, and light has not come to him. But see, that's the bridge. That's why even in the highest level of initiation, the book is called The Bridge to the Light, because what it's trying to emulate is the statement that we bring light to the darkness. We toil in the field. The man mainly as the gardener, his creation was in the physical plane to reap the burden of the physical plane. That's why he was made physically stronger, so the woman could keep up the spiritual plane, right? So the man's strength and physical strength is for him to be able to confront those entities that are still needing to be planted again and still need to be nourished again. See, this is not just about kicking some ass. This is about in destroying or killing something. This is about becoming a man and becoming a woman and being an adept. That's what this whole growth process is. And I wouldn't doubt for one moment that all of this stuff that I just talked about is happening just so we can do that. I wouldn't put it past the universe, because what I saw was so intelligent. I could not and I cannot believe that it's making a mistake.
Yeah.
You see, like it's not possible. And even within our own existence, we can start, when you start to feel yourself, you start to realize that, wait a minute, this is hypersentience. So could it possibly be that I'm interpreting things the wrong way? That all of this stuff is actually happening so that I can wake up. And what I'm waking up to, and I'll explain people the simple process, and I get into it a lot deeper in semester 2. But when we are planted here by ourselves, the process is done so that way we can keep the generation of perpetual energy in the system. The cosmos is a perpetual system. So we send a seed. When we send a seed, when the seed makes impact, it takes on the mark. The mark is our frequency, our tone, our vibration, or what you would call your name. That remains hidden for a while, meaning you don't have the identity of who you really are yet. And then as you grow up, as long as you grow up with the right fermentations and all the right crucible nature and the pressure and all of the stuff that's needed in this planet. Think about it. We got atmospheres, we got pressurization, we got oxygen, we got syzygy, we got synergy, we got all these different things going on just to create the right environment for our growth or our decay. Because behold, I saw the ladder coming up and down. I didn't see the ladder just going one way. See, that's the person that just wants to be good. They're like, well, the ladder's only going up. No, the ladder's going down. And the reason why you need that is you need to know you can mess this up. You can, by sitting on your couch all day or talking about people all day or not thinking that this is serious, totally put yourself into the position of disadvantage to where you're going to need the light to come to you in a while. But while you're in this position to actually begin to shine on your own, you've grown up to that level, take it all the way.